Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. I am back and it's time to deliver the first new release review of the year. This week I'm going to be breaking out of the indie pop mould with Empty Hands by Poppy. I am so excited to be finally covering Poppy on the podcast, so let's go. I just want to apologise with the delay in dropping this review. I've been so sick on and off since the new year, and it's been difficult trying to record with my voice out of shape, and I am still recovering, so sorry if my voice still sounds weird in places, but I just wanted to get this review out and not keep you all waiting. Thank you for your patience. Empty Hands is the seventh studio album by singer-songwriter Poppy, released on the 23rd of January 2026 through Sumerian Records. It is the follow-up to her critically acclaimed record Negative Spaces from 2024. Poppy worked on the record with keyboardist and producer Jordan Fish from the rock band Bring Me the Horizon. Anyone who is listening and is aware of Poppy will know that it's difficult to describe her sound, and you definitely can't put her into one genre category. She is one of those artists who keeps evolving, switches things up, and is definitely not afraid in pushing the boundaries as a female artist. I was surprised when the album was announced before Christmas, as it didn't seem that long ago when her previous record, Negative Spaces, was released. But I avoided the singles like I usually do, as I wanted to wait and have the full album experience, as it wasn't really that long to wait for the album. It's great when a big new record is released in the new year, as it breaks up the bleak month of January, and it's lovely to have something new as a distraction, just like last year with Eusexia by FKA Twigs. The girls are bringing the fierce again, and this time it's Poppy with her explosive new record, Empty Hands. If you are listening and have been familiar with the podcast for a long time and being used to the artists that I have been covering, you might be surprised that I've decided to cover Poppy. She doesn't really fit into the indie pop mould. Her genre pushing is far wider than that, but Poppy is actually one of my favourite artists. So, I have to give credit again to the wonderful Fern Stone and her music reaction channel on YouTube. It was through her channel that Discovering Poppy and the I Disagree record during the pandemic. Now, metalcore or industrial metal or whatever you want to call it might not be the genre that I am most drawn to, but there is something about Poppy that I just can't resist. Poppy's musical style over the years has been expansive, and she has dabbled in many genres, especially with synth pop and electro pop in her earlier work, which is my bag, as you all know by now. But she has slowly evolved into full on metalcore, complete with screaming vocals. I am drawn to Poppy and her artistry because she takes risks, and I fully respect that. She still has the synth pop moments, see crystallised on Negative Spaces, but I love how experimental she is. Poppy has the songwriting chops to back it all up. Again, see the I Disagree record for evidence of this. She is able to twist and turn her songs into things you don't expect and keeps you on your toes. And I love that. You never know what to expect from Poppy, and she still continues to surprise. I wasn't the biggest fan of her Flux and Zig releases, but they are records that I am going to revisit at some point, as I feel I didn't give them enough attention at the time. But when Negative Spaces was released, I just fell in love with Poppy's sound all over again, and I love the aggressive side to her. Her music gives me strength and cuts through the bad days when the anxiety or the depression take over. There is something so weirdly comforting listening to Poppy screaming and the heavy instrumentals which just speak to me. Even if you just love pop, there is so much to unpack with Poppy's records, and after this episode, I hope you dip into her discography because she is so unique. And together with her artwork, image, and visuals, she is a total package for a strong female artist, and I welcome that with open arms. Empty Hands might not be as experimental compared to her past records, but Poppy is still assertive as ever. In receiving the signed copy of the vinyl recently has really helped me to feel better while recovering from a chest infection. Her vinyl variants are always so on point, and Empty Hands will be a record that will be getting a lot of spins in 2026. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Public Domain. Poppy really doesn't give you any time to settle in here. Public Domain comes at you immediately, and that feels very deliberate. There's no gentle easing into the sound of the record. Instead, you're dropped straight into its world, which instantly signals that this album isn't interested in playing it safe. Vocally, she's fascinating on this track. The verses feel cold and almost robotic, creating this detached mechanical atmosphere before she suddenly shifts into something much more emotional and intense in the chorus. That contrast works brilliantly, making the chorus feel even more powerful by comparison. It's like she is flicking a switch between control and chaos. The instrumental backs this up perfectly. There's a heavy blend of industrial metal and electronic elements that instantly brought Nine Inch Nails to mind, especially in the way the tension slowly builds. And as the track progresses, the drums become more and more prominent, driving everything toward a really forceful outro that feels almost overwhelming in the best way. As an opener, Public Domain does exactly what it needs to do. It sets the tone, introduces the album's harsher sonic palette, and makes it clear that Poppy isn't interested in easing the listener in gently. It's bold, confrontational, and a strong statement of intent right from the start. Track 2, Bruised Sky. The screaming is definitely here, guys. But what really makes this track work is how Poppy balances that aggression with an almost angelic vocal delivery in the chorus. It creates this really striking contrast that never feels jarring. Instead, it feels intentional and controlled. One of the things I love most is how she blends these different vocal styles directly into the production rather than treating them as separate moments. The screaming isn't just there for shock value, and the clean vocals aren't there to soften things too much. They work together in harmony. If she'd leaned fully into screaming for the entire record without any variation, I think it could have become pretty tiring, but that's where Poppy's songwriting really shines. She gives us genuinely strong melodies to latch onto, especially in the chorus, which feels both powerful and memorable. By the time you reach it, you almost want the screaming to come back in, and when it does, it feels earned rather than overwhelming. That push and pull keeps the track exciting and stops it from feeling one note. There's also some great synth work toward the end of the track, adding another layer into the chaos and giving the outro a real sense of momentum. It rounds things off nicely and reinforces how confident Poppy is at juggling heaviness, melody, and texture without losing control of the song. Track 3, Guardian. Guardian really highlights just how strong Poppy's vocal performance is. No matter how heavy or dense a production becomes, her voice is never drowned out. It sits crystal clear in the mix, right up front, with the instrumental working alongside her rather than competing for attention. That clarity makes a track feel really confident and controlled. The breakdown is a real standout moment. The synths take over in a way that feels atmospheric rather than overwhelming, giving the song a brief sense of space before the drums slowly rebuild the intensity. When everything comes back in, it feels deliberate and satisfying, adding momentum without rushing the track. What I like most about Guardian is how it shows that even as Poppy leans further into heavier sounds, she hasn't abandoned the electronic and synth driven elements that have always been part of her identity. Those textures help balance out the aggression, stopping the song from feeling too relentless and adding depth to the overall sound. It's a track that feels both powerful and polished, and it reinforces how comfortable Poppy sounds navigating this heavier territory while still keeping melody and atmosphere at the core of the song. Tracks 4 and 5, Constantly Nowhere and Unravel. Constantly Nowhere acts as a brief but effective interlude. It's stripped right back to just Poppy's vocals, layered with a robotic filter that feels cold and slightly unsettling. It doesn't overstay its welcome, but it does exactly what it needs to do, setting the mood and leading seamlessly into the next track. That transition into Unravel is where things really open up. Sonically, it leans far more into a pop driven sound built around synths and piano, which at first feels almost restrained. There's a sense of anticipation as the song slowly unfolds, and when it finally explodes into the chorus, it's incredibly satisfying. What makes Unravel so interesting is how unpredictable it is. The track constantly shifts and evolves, throwing in subtle twists and turns that keep you engaged. It's definitely one of those songs that rewards repeat listens, and each time you come back to it, there's something new to notice, whether there's a production detail or a vocal moment you missed before. The bridge is a real highlight. I honestly wasn't expecting Poppy to deliver that kind of vocal there, but she absolutely fucking serves it. It's powerful, confident, and commanding before switching straight back to something softer and more angelic. It's a perfect example of how comfortable Poppy is moving between extremes, and it makes Unravel one of the most compelling moments on the record. Track 6, Dying to Forget. So the first time I played this record was actually at work with my earbuds in. And when I hit this track, it genuinely made me jump out of my skin. I was not expecting an intro like that at all. It's such a shock to the system, and it immediately grabs your attention in a way that's impossible to ignore. Dying to Forget is completely bonkers and unhinged, and honestly, I am so here for it. The chaos feels intentional rather than messy, like the song is deliberately pushing everything to its limits. Poppy delivers an absolutely ferocious vocal performance here, and I honestly didn't realise she could scream with this much power. It sounds that she's with ease with the vocals, but I can only imagine how difficult it actually is to pull off that level of intensity and control. She's got some serious pipes on this track. The screams hit hard without sounding strained or sloppy in the mix. And they add to the feeling that the song is spiraling out of control in the best possible way. It's overwhelming, but it's meant to be. And placement wise, it's perfect. Sitting right at the halfway point of the record, Dying to Forget feels like a turning point, the moment where everything fully erupts. And even when I played the vinyl later and completely forgot about that jump scare, it had the exact same impact. That opening still hits just as hard, proving how effective and memorable this track really is. Poppy is spitting some serious anger in this track and ending it by screaming, "I'll end your fucking life," is just so powerful. Now, I had to do a bit of digging with this track, and I discovered that Poppy is referencing her former collaborator, Titanic Sinclair. After reading about their separation, it's clear why Poppy is so angry in this track. She is full of rage and power and control. And if you are not aware of this backstory, I urge you to do some homework and read about this, and it puts this track fully into context. Track 7, Time Will Tell. This is a real standout for me. That chorus is massive, and Poppy delivers a fucking fantastic vocal performance from start to finish. It's one of those moments where everything clicks. The melody sticks instantly, and her voice sounds completely locked in and assured. The production around her is pure ear candy. Those synths and electronic beats paired with the drums to create this rich, immersive sound that feels powerful without being overwhelming. It's slick, energetic, and incredibly satisfying to listen to, especially on repeat. Poppy sounds absolutely awesome here, and the track really highlights how well her voice sits within this electronic heavy framework. I also think it's important to point out just how clean and crystal clear the production is across a record like this, especially given how heavy and layered it can get. Nothing ever sounds muddy or dull. Every element has space to breathe, and that clarity makes a huge difference to how impactful the songs feel. A lot of that comes down to the work of Jordan Fish, who does a fantastic job balancing Poppy's incredibly versatile vocals with the instrumentation. The result feels polished but never sterile, heavy but never cluttered, which is no small feat on an album this ambitious. It really elevates Time Will Tell into one of the strongest moments on the record for me. Track 8, Eat the Hate. Eat the Hate might be a short track, but there's an incredible amount packed into its runtime. It wastes absolutely no time, jumping straight in and constantly shifting gears. There are twists and turns all over the place, giving the song this restless, unpredictable energy that keeps you fully engaged from start to finish. Poppy really goes for it here. There's no holding back, vocally or sonically, and that commitment makes the track feel bigger than its length suggests. Even in such a compact format, it feels bold and purposeful rather than rushed. I can almost guarantee this is going to be a live favourite. It has that explosive, high energy quality that feels tailor made for the stage, and I honestly can't wait to hear how it sounds in a live setting. Track 9, The Weight. The Weight sees Poppy leaning back into her pop lane in places, and it's a really interesting moment on the record. What I love is how naturally she balances those pop instincts with heavier metal elements. It never feels like she's choosing one over the other. Instead, they coexist in a way that feels effortless and intentional. While listening to this track, it actually made me think about Rina Sawayama and her debut album and how exciting it would be if Rina went fully down the poppy route and committed to a full on metal album. That same willingness to blend genres and completely ignore expectations is something they both share, and the weight really highlights how well that approach can work. In the context of the album, this track feels like a palate cleanser. After the intensity and chaos that comes before it, the weight gives you a moment to reset without killing the momentum. It transitions perfectly into the next track, acting as a bridge rather than a slowdown, and shows once again how carefully thought out the album's pacing really is. It's a subtle but important moment on the record, one that reinforces how confidently Poppy can move between genres without ever losing her identity. Track 10, If We're Following the Light. The intro here is beautifully atmospheric. Poppy's soft vocals layered over the drums immediately draw you in, creating this sense of tension and restraint. You can feel that something bigger is coming. The track makes it clear early on that it's not going to stay this calm forever. When that explosion finally arrives, Poppy absolutely delivers. And what really stands out is how controlled it all feels. She doesn't belt or scream just for the sake of it. She knows exactly when to hold back, and that restraint makes the heavier moments land even harder. The contrast between softness and intensity is what makes the track so exciting, and those explosive sections feel earned rather than predictable. There's also something about the electronic elements in the production that really caught my attention. Certain synth textures and the overall atmosphere reminded me of Depeche Mode. That moody, slightly dark electronic vibe, the synth work, and the overall vibe of this song took me there. But at its core, this still feels unmistakably like a poppy track. The guitar work deserves a mention too. It adds weight and texture without overpowering everything else, helping push the track into one of the real standout moments on Empty Hands. It's dramatic, dynamic, and incredibly well balanced. A song that perfectly showcases how confident Poppy sounds at this point on the record. Tracks 11 and 12, Blink and Ribs. Blink is a short interlude that smoothly transitions into Ribs, and no, this isn't a Ribs cover, although I honestly think Poppy would deliver such a kick ass version if she ever decided to take on Lord. Ribs continues the sonic direction set up by the previous track, with synths and electronic beats driving the verses before everything explodes into a much heavier chorus. That contrast is becoming a real strength of the album at this point, and it's used especially well here. About halfway through the track, Poppy brings in the screaming, but once again she balances it with softer vocal moments, so it never feels overwhelming. That push and pull between aggression and restraint really leaves an impact, making the heavier sections hit harder without losing the melody. There's also a noticeable drum and bass influence in the beats, which adds another unexpected layer to the track. It's just further proof of how versatile Poppy is as an artist. She's constantly shifting between genres and textures, but it all still feels cohesive and intentional. Track 13, Empty Hands. The title track, and honestly, this is completely nuts. It's unhinged in the best possible way, and I am absolutely here for it. Holy shit. From the moment it starts, it feels feral and confrontational, like Poppy has decided to throw everything she has left into this final moment. One detail I love is how you can hear her clearing her throat in between the screaming. It's such a small thing, but it adds this raw, almost uncomfortable realism to the track. It makes the performance feel physical and exhausting, like she's pushing herself to the edge. I even picked that up while listening on vinyl, which just makes it hit even harder. But at the same time, I also think it shows Poppy's sense of humour, and little details like that I always appreciate. Musically, it's firing on all cylinders. The drums are massive, the guitar work is relentless, and then those synths come crashing in to add even more intensity. Everything feels dialed up to maximum, but it never collapses into chaos. It's controlled rage even as it spirals. And that's what makes it such a perfect closer. Rather than easing the listener out gently, Poppy chooses to end the record in the most aggressive, unfiltered way possible. The track becomes more and more unhinged as it goes on. And honestly, by the end, I'm just like, yes, Poppy, give us that rage. It's bold, cathartic, and an incredibly strong way to close out Empty Hands. Overall, I know Empty Hands has had a pretty mixed reaction, and I can understand why it might not be for everyone. It's confrontational, it's chaotic, and that doesn't always make things easy for the listener. But for me, that's exactly what makes it work. I really enjoyed this record, and the more time I've spent with it, the more it's revealed itself. Listening to Empty Hands during a dark, dreary January, especially while being plagued with flu and illness, it's honestly felt like such a breath of fresh air. There's something incredibly cathartic about its intensity, its unpredictability, in the way Poppy fully commits to every sound and emotion she throws at the listener. It doesn't try to comfort you, but in a strange way, that honesty is comforting in itself. What really stands out across the album is just how versatile and fearless Poppy is. She moves between pop, metal, industrial, electronic, and everything in between without ever losing her identity. The production is sharp, the vocals are fearless, and the pacing keeps things exciting from start to finish. Empty Hands feels bold, uncompromising, and alive. And for me, that's exactly what I needed at that moment. It's an album that has kicked off the new releases for 2026, and we are off to such a strong start. And it's exciting to know that there will be more new records to cover and discover on the podcast in the coming months. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Please follow me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could follow, like and share, as it helps other music lovers to find the show. I am also on YouTube. You can find me at the Indie Pop Girl podcast, and I'd be grateful if you could like and subscribe, as I'm creating content, shorts and posting teasers for upcoming episodes. You can also find me on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast if you want to give me a follow over there. There is a public Spotify playlist available, and I've added some of my favourite tracks from the artists and records covered on the podcast. This will be updated as the episodes drop, so if you are curious with any of the artists and albums that I've covered, please give it a listen, and who knows, you might find a new discovery. You can find me on Spotify at the Indie Pop Girl, and the playlist is called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes. I'll be back very soon, and I'll be continuing the Indie Classic series with a record and a band that I discovered just over 30 years ago. This debut record is the ultimate indie classic and still holds up all these years later and got me through my teenage years and beyond. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl, with a very dodgy throat, and it is time to go. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.